Welcome to Green Disruptors, Scaling the Future, a podcast where we dive into the innovations transforming clean energy and the real business challenges of making sustainability scalable. From breakthrough technologies to the tough decisions behind growth, we explore what it takes to build a greener future at scale. I'm your host, Megan Kerr, and my mission is to help green tech companies tell stories that matter. This podcast is brought to you by Mountaintop Social Marketing. Today's guest is someone who's not just talking about disrupting the energy sector, he's actually doing it. Chris Griffin is the CEO of Hover, a microgrid development company that's redefining how power is generated and distributed. After a successful career on Wall Street, Chris made the leap into clean tech with a bold mission to create energy systems that are resilient, independent, and most importantly, sustainable without subsidies. In this episode, we dive into how Hover's patented wind turbine technology and cutting-edge control systems are enabling commercial buildings, military bases, and entire communities to take control of their own power, and what that means for the future of the grid as we know it. If you've ever wondered what it really takes to future-proof energy or what microgrid means beyond the buzzword, this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. Well, I don't have lyrics. All I have is a riff. But I'm hearing it in my head. You want to hear it for real?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we got to get this right.
I know. So it's an unusual start. I just started recording. I figured this would be fun. So now I'm going to get all something kind of like that. And then I'm picturing funk up high with with guitars up high. Right. Maybe a little tambourine, something like that.
Well, you get it. You need a kazoo in the background.
Okay, that's your job.
I'm not doing it.
Okay, well, then maybe lyrics. I don't know.
I can't. I had some lyrics. I started some lyrics and then I threw them out. I decided, no, that's not going to work for her.
Well, you're fired from the band, but you're welcome to the podcast.
Okay. I'll submit my ideas for reconciliation, and if maybe I get admitted back in, then I can perform.
Okay, that's fair. You'll be considered. But anyway, nice to see you. How's your day going?
Day's going great. It's been a whirlwind of a week. I've had a great time visiting with some people in New Orleans. I'm back in Florida now, but I am ready to go.
Awesome. Okay, so we're just going to talk about you and talk about Hover and what you're doing today and just get to know your mission a little better. So let's start with how did you get into this? Like, what's your background? What steered you in this climate space?
Yes. So my career really started off with having nothing to do with the climate space whatsoever. Coming out of graduate school, I went and worked for Morgan Stanley as an investment banker. I did that for 5 years or so. I had already done that for 6 years prior to going to graduate school. And then after going to graduate school, I went back into Wall Street and worked in New York at Morgan Stanley and absolutely loved it. I really did love it. It was invigorating. I feel like what made that experience so valuable were the clients, the people I got to talk to. And it was the corporations there were big corporations. I mean, we tend to give these big corporations a really bad name, but they're full of people, right?
Yeah. They're people making big moves, which is cool.
and it's not, it's like all of us who started something, we want to get bigger, right? Mm-hmm. But then as soon as you get bigger,
we demonize people
everyone doesn't like you anymore. So why do I want to get bigger then if no one's ever going to like me?
Well, and it's the same with power. Like, being powerful sounds really great, but then it's like if you don't,
as you have it, you're the bad guy, right?
Right, but we need powerful people to make big decisions. So might as well be one of us.
And that's exactly right. And what I learned during that time at Morgan Stanley, I would say was really valuable to me, is that the people who were the customers, the ones who were buying things, the ones who were raising money and then spending it and deploying it. I mean, the bankers, we were just moving paper around. We did some pretty exciting things. We came up with some ideas once in a while. But the people who were really driving Wall Street were the customers, were the people who worked in corporations who were raising all this capital and then deploying it towards new ideas. Sometimes towards new ideas, sometimes to old bad ideas. But they were the ones moving and spending the money. The bankers weren't spending the money, right? They were just moving it from one place to another. So I learned so much from them, and so much from I'm grateful today that some of the people I now work with right now are clients that I used to have as a banker. There was no connection to the two, and it's not the same people, but it's the same companies that Hover now gets to work with that I once was the banker to. Case in point being somebody like IBM. So it's been a real full circle for me. And even when I started in that vein, my focus was in the energy sector. And so I got to, I sat in meetings with God forbid, with the people at Exxon, the people at Chevron, the people at, Occidental Petroleum, and all these large, oil and gas companies and we were raising capital for them. Now we were also doing things for large finance companies like GM and Ford and GE and people like that. There was those were the Fortune 100 companies at the time, right? Yeah. And those who were the big banks, that's what we did business for. So I learned so much from that experience. I'm fully recovered now. And it's
a journey for all of us.
I've moved on from all that, but I will say that I still look back on it and treasure it. I don't look back on it like that was terrible. I look back on it like that was really valuable. And today, as a founder of a company that is dependent on cash flow, I'm really glad I understand how that is generated. I really am glad I understand how companies are capitalized, and I'm really glad that the business background that I came from can be applied literally daily to what I do. So it's
any good climate idea or technology or initiative without that funding and business savvy isn't going anywhere. So I think it's pretty cool.
It's been part of the fundamental building blocks for Hover. In that, one of the things we started at over 10 years ago, we were just in the design and the development phase, and we were really looking at trying to break new ground. There were some guidelines that we had to put in place, little guardrails, if you will, that made sure you kept going in a certain direction. And one of those was we had to be able to create and distribute power without any government subsidies, right? Which most of the renewable energy space is built on government subsidies, right?
Is that guardrails you put up for yourselves as part of your mission statement, or was that
No, internally. We're like, we don't want to design something, because I look at it like you're not sustainable unless you can sustain through a government change.
Funding.
Right?
Yes.
Which is guaranteed
more
to
and
happen.
More relevant.
It's guaranteed to change again and change again and change again. And so how can you be sustainable if I'm totally dependent on some administration making sure that I have the cash to do my job? It's not up to them to do my job. It's up to us to do our job. And it's up to us to create something that is valuable enough that it can stand on its own, right? You don't see a whole lot of subsidies for things like paper cups, right? Why? Because people figured out how to make them without, subsidies. And there comes a point where we have to do that in our industry. Otherwise, it is not sustainable.
So, back up 2 steps. Tell us what Hover does and how have you been able to do that without subsidies?
Yes. Okay. Great segue. See, you're good at this. This is not my forte. I don't have a jingle that I've got to work on. That's your thing. No, I've got... I've had so much fun with the group of people that started to create Hover. Hover is a microgrid development company that owns its own technology. We started out trying to build a better mousetrap. We wanted to build a wind turbine that would sit on top of a building and produce power. Now, when we looked into that business, we noticed that dozens of people had already tried and failed famously. Things falling off buildings and things didn't work, and millions of dollars spent and nothing produced. And so we said, rather than just run away from this idea, why don't we run towards it and find out what people were doing wrong? And we discovered what they did wrong. That we had a little luck along the way, and along the way, over many, many years, over a decade of development before we actually deployed a product, We learned a lot, and we filed a lot of patents. We filed 36 patents along the way. We've been given 22 of them. Most of them are around the wind turbine and the wind turbine design.
The design of the turbine itself.
Yeah, and that was really the beginning of what we were trying to do. And when I said a moment ago that we wanted to do that and build and deliver wind power in such a way that we didn't need any government subsidies, that's where that came from early on. And
so, I'm going to try to fill in the blanks. Tell me if I'm wrong here. So in order to sell and raise capital, you have to demonstrate cost savings very clearly up front.
Yes. Or you have to demonstrate progress, right? That you're moving towards your mission, right? The iPhone wasn't developed overnight. And suddenly, look, we did it, right? And not only that, but I'm on version 16 or something now. It's only been 25 years, so it keeps iterating. And so, in the same way, we built and designed some things. We built 5 or 6 different prototypes early on. Some as small as your kitchen tabletop, and then others as big as a house, right? And so we built some pretty large. Some large pilots and prototypes to test and to prove and to develop and then to iterate. And we did that. We did that 4 times before we actually installed one, and that was incredibly valuable. We tested out at Texas Tech. We tested with some of the national labs. We tested in live environments. We tested ourselves, behind closed doors. You have to do a lot of testing and prove up that what you've actually accomplished is something valuable. Along the way, we kept filing patents when we felt like we discovered something or we crossed a new barrier or what have you. So, today those patents are extremely valuable. But that was the first building block of how do you build a microgrid that is sustainable. And we can talk a little more about microgrids here in a moment. But the point of designing something that didn't need government subsidies was the first step. And then that energy generation source was wind for us, and now we've branched out to include all energy sources to try to change the energy model that is happening here in the United States and really around the world. I mean, we're spoiled in the U.S. For our power system, which is excellent.
Because we turn the light on and it comes on every time.
Right, and that's not the case at 80% of this planet. So and actually in California too. So there's a lot of, and in Puerto Rico. I mean, some places U.S. with their U.S. name on it, that's not as certain anymore as it once was, and the grid infrastructure is getting older and older. For us, starting with the wind turbine and expanding into a microgrid approach is all about building a better system that's more efficient than what we once had. And
so for people who are not familiar with what a microgrid is, give us like a middle school definition.
Yeah, here's the easiest way to think about it. And I actually was having this debate with some very smart people this week at a conference where everyone has a different definition of microgrid. So if yours is different, don't worry.
This is Chris's take.
Yeah, you're in the norm if you have a different idea of what it might be. But this is the way I like to describe it. A microgrid ought to do everything that the current macrogrid does, only smaller, because it's micro, right? And what does that mean? That means the power ought to come on anytime I need it to. It means it ought to run 24/7. I have another shirt that just says 8760 on it. Those are the numbers of hours in a year, meaning I want to be running 8,760 hours in a year, unlike most renewable energy resources that are some fraction of that. And so the idea of having power whenever you need it, it's important for us to, keep the refrigerator running in our home or to keep our phones charged. But it's more important for businesses who are running 3 shifts 24/7 to produce products. If they're not able to do that, they don't produce products, they lose money. It's more important for a hospital to keep life-saving refrigeration for medicines and organ donors and things like that, because if they don't have it, they can't do those things. So there are some very critical infrastructure, life-threatening reasons to make sure you have
relies on power consistency.
Right. Consistently, and that 24/7. And today, although we have that here in the U.S. for most people, there are many places around the world that do not. And there are places even in developed countries where it's questionable from time to
Yeah.
time.
Oh, totally.
And
I've traveled. I've
therefore,
experienced that.
right. And arguably the reason that is the case is because we have the model that is currently in place. There's a centralized power plant that makes all the power, and then it runs out to everybody through some sort of wire of some kind, right?
So I have an analogy.
Yeah.
Have you heard this? Like in Canada, they're not having as big of an egg shortage right now because their chicken farms, there's a lot more of them and they're a lot smaller. But here we're relying on several enormous farms, and then a flu comes in and wipes out all the chickens. It's like, is that a fair comparison?
It's a perfect comparison. It's exactly right. It's the way it's the way you distribute resilience, right? Mm-hmm. They are resilient to the egg issue because it's been distributed to multiple places of production. That is exactly what we're talking about here. We believe microgrids should be distributed to people all over the world. I would rather have 100,000 little tiny microgrids across the U.S. than the 6 grids that we currently have today, right? And you could argue that that has a lot of impact. There's a lot of different things that would come from that.
It's like a security issue too. You think of hacking, like all those superhero movies where the entire city goes out. Like that couldn't happen if you have a microgrids.
Right. I mean, I think it was even a Die Hard movie, right, where the guy just targeted a substation and he was going to shut down the eastern United States because of, one flip of a switch. Now, they made it look more complicated than that. But the point is, what if you were to take that approach completely off the table? Meaning if you flip that switch, like nobody got impacted because everybody had their own power. And so, what Hover focuses on is giving power to individual locations, whether it's a manufacturing site or a hospital or a school, or whether it's a group of homes that pulled together and said, we're going to buy power for ourselves. Whatever it looks like, distributing that power across the United States is the right way to distribute resilience. And if you want resilience for the country, then it needs to be distributed. Otherwise, it's not resilience.
I feel like I should start singing right now. This is just so exciting. I'm just kidding.
You got the
Woo!
Well, no. Look, that's the and that's I have so much fun with that because we get stuck in this mode of finding something that works and then throwing $1 trillion at it, right?
Yeah.
And then it never changes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a solar panel; they work, but the solar efficiency numbers from 2001 are only better by like 2%, 24 years later. And how much have we spent on solar in the last 24 years? It's got to be multiple trillions. I think it's like 2.4 trillion or something like that we spent on solar panels around the world, and the efficiency is improved by 2%. That's just unacceptable. I mean, it doesn't even make sense that that's the case. So, and yet, the money's there, it's available, we're being given it. And so since I didn't design something that can operate on its own without the subsidy, I'm going to sit there and keep taking the subsidy, and I don't need to improve it because I can get paid for it. That is sad. That's sad.
That is sad. Okay, can I play devil's advocate a little bit?
Please do. I like it.
So
disrupt
what happens?
The conversation.
Yeah. Stab. No. So what happens when it's not windy? Like obviously there are some areas, or even like if you're in a mountain pass, like the wind is going to be great and pretty consistent. What if it's not?
That's great. Oh man, I don't know. What do I do? No, I got an idea. Okay. No. I'm just kidding.
I never thought of that.
Whoa.
Business over.
Hey guys, we can't do it anymore. Never mind. No. Kidding.
Now I feel like you're making fun of my question.
No. It's the right question. All renewable sources are intermittent, right? And so that's why we moved to a microgrid once we felt like we made some massive progress on both the efficiency and the ability of wind to be installed on a building. Of course, we realized that the wind doesn't always blow. Of course, the sun doesn't always shine either. But fortunately, those two things happen. They kind of offset each other a little bit, meaning the wind tends to blow more at night, and obviously the sun is up during the day. So you don't have a full crossover. There are times when, of course, the sun is out in the middle of the day and the wind is really blowing. That does occur. And so the common answer today is for you to take wind and solar add some storage battery of some kind, and between the three, you can get to 100% renewable energy on your site. Now, that said, a lot of people would argue some things. For example, are solar panels even renewable? They're not recyclable. The silica is not that recyclable. What happens at the end of life? Same with batteries. Lithium-ion batteries with an anode and a cathode system. Those things are not recyclable. So you're not 100%.
Well, and it takes a good amount of imprint to create them in the first place. So
exactly right. So the supply chain is not really carbon neutral itself, and so you have challenges to those mechanisms. What I would argue, though, is that we have to take the steps first to make sure we make these impacts now, and with the plan to iterate beyond it soon. Meaning, you don't just stop at the first step. You want to take another step.
Absolutely. No, when you're building anything, you got to just freaking start building. And like you said with the iPhone, like it's fine that we're on version 18. That means there have been improvements all the way.
Exactly. We're on, version 4.4 of our own turbine. We have a control system which allows us to plug in any future energy source. So if, a bottle of water becomes an energy source someday, just plug it into our microgrid management system and it will then generate power for your site. Hydrogen is something that's going to take a lot longer for it to become financially viable, but at the same time, it doesn't mean we shouldn't keep pursuing it. It's worthwhile to pursue. And in the meantime, I would hope that all of our friends in the development arena, particularly around solar and things like nuclear, if anybody even wants that near them, all these other potential production sources, that they would continue to improve in their performance numbers. That solar would not only be a 2% improvement over the next 20 years, but a 40% improvement over the next 20 years. And if you could do that, you would change the world, right? And so, rather than just deploy as fast as you can, we should be iterating the technologies themselves. Just like every technology is iterated, so should the energy production sources be iterated. And I think that's where we've hit a little bit of a snag. I mean, the traditional wind turbines you see out on big wind farms are the same wind turbines in design-wise that they were using in the Netherlands, 4,000 years ago. So why are we still using the same design?
That's crazy.
It's a propeller that drives a turbine that makes something. You could argue we could improve on that a little bit,
totally.
over time. I'm not still driving a Model T Ford, are you? But we've demanded we have better cars. But we're not demanding we have better power production, right? And yet the whole world's dependent on power production. Let's get it right.
And that's obviously not going backwards, as does anything. So if you're not growing, you're dying. So
that's exactly right.
Okay, so another question for you. Is there ever a case where like you find a customer who wants to put one of these on their building? Would there ever be like an unsuitable, like you're like, you know what, you're not in a good spot for this? Like, do you ever turn people down?
Yeah. We will turn people down we would never just say no. We would just say, it's going to take you longer to make your money back, right? Meaning,
sure. And
there's
then
always some wind and there's always some sun. And honestly, we don't stop there. We don't stop at just the wind and solar and the battery. We explore other options. We'll even explore, should you use a natural gas generator? Because if your other option is to turn on the diesel generator in the basement, we probably want to improve that. So why don't we upgrade?
Even if it's not a forever solution, it's better now for this transition phase.
Correct. This is the energy transition, right? This is not the energy completion. So let's transition some. Let's make sure you're making an improvement. Wherever you are, we can help you find an improvement. And that's what Hover really focuses on. As much as we're so proud of our technology around wind, and we're very excited about what we've done with the control systems, which we haven't even touched on here. But with those two things to make a microgrid, it still doesn't matter what we think. It matters what's happening at the client. Right. And what's happening at those customers? Like you said, if I'm a customer who needs eggs and I've got, chickens out back, I'm getting my eggs, I don't have to worry about it. If I'm a customer who needs power and I'm making power on my site, then I don't need to worry if the whole grid goes down because of some movie called Die Hard. Right. Like if that happens, then oh no, what do I do? Do I send everybody home and we can't work anymore? Do we stop producing things? Do I lose out on millions of dollars of revenue? Or does my hospital shut down and we can't heal people anymore? Like, these are big questions that really have an impact. And so distributing that opportunity to people might include things that simply improve where they were rather than take them to 100% green on day one. As much as I would prefer that they get there, at least take the steps towards being there first. Make a wise decision and not just a decided one that says, I'm only going to do this, and anything that doesn't do that, I'm not doing it, right? That's a little naive, honestly, because if the alternative, when I'm not using the wind and solar, when it's actually not sunny and there is no wind outside and I decided I'm not putting anything else on my site, then I flip on my diesel burning generator because that's the only option I have left, I'm actually doing more damage than if I had made a better decision about moving to something a little more efficient. So it's not it's just a little more realistic. And yet the key for us, as much as we want to move towards that end game, is making sure that the site is managed, that we deliver some answer to the site. Let's give you resilience, site. That's how we disrupt the model. If every site has its own resilience, then we could turn the grid power, the macrogrid, into the backup system. And while the utilities focus on that, Hover's focused on making each and every site as resilient, as independent as it can possibly be. And we'll use every possible metric to get there, as long as it's an improvement from where you already are.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your customer base. Who is your ideal customer?
So, do you know anybody who's in a building? That's our customer.
Okay, so it's like, you're not like, we only go after grocery stores or universities. Like, how do you find these people, and what's that sales process like?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. These days we're not actually charging around, trying to find people anymore. More and more people are just coming to us. But
nice, inbound.
Any site that is concerned about its site's power is what I would say is the right way to think about it. So, for example, we've done a lot of work with the British military. And we did that work because they were buying all their oil from Russia. And they were like, we can't be buying oil and powering our military sites with the energy that's coming from somebody we're at war with. Like, this doesn't make sense. So they had to have a better answer, and we helped deliver them a better answer. That is, they were concerned about their power on their site and where it was coming from, so they made a decision to change it. Anybody who has that same concern is somebody that is valuable to us to talk to. Most of the people that we're doing business with now are in the commercial and industrial space, the C&I space as it's called. And the C&I players are mostly big corporations. So large corporations who have, dozens or hundreds or even more, many hundreds of locations that are large, big box stores, even big manufacturing centers, cold food storage. Any food chain has a big cold food storage distribution center somewhere in the country or in multiple countries. Large warehouses, for example, everybody orders online these days, so those goods and services have to make their way through the supply chain. All of those buildings are ideal for us. But even more so than that, just an office building with 5 or 6 floors of offices is a great site for us. In suburban USA, pick any city in the country or any small town that has a little office park somewhere. Those are really great because the consumption is not very high, but they're high enough to allow some wind and some solar to really make an impact. And they're usually big enough buildings that it's a really sizable enough installation that you can take the building completely off the grid. And so that's a way that we think we can make the biggest difference. That's where Hover really specializes in it. If you want to get your building to be 100% resilient, we can help you. And we do. And that's where we focus. If you still need to stay connected to the grid, which some do, then stay connected, but use them as your backup system and use our microgrid as your primary power system.
Yes. So what's the current bottleneck in Hover's growth?
Right now for us, we are growing as fast as we possibly can. We need to hire more people. We need to bring more people in. We need our manufacturers to move faster. And I would say the toughest thing in the industry out there is really kind of how we started this discussion. Okay, well, what is a microgrid? What are you talking about, Chris? What do you mean?
So educating people on what it is.
The education and just bringing people up the curve. So there's a difference between kind of educating people and bringing them up the curve on what exactly do we have, and then ensuring that they actually believe it's valuable to them. So,
I mean, that's business 101 is demonstrating value. Because if they don't see it, they're out the door already.
Right. And that's always the toughest part. I think for us, it's as soon as there's always a moment in the conversation where as soon as somebody says, well, wait a minute, I don't have to worry about this rolling brownout here in California anymore. Like my power goes down for 3 hours a day. I've had to curtail they drop down my ACs. We have all these sensors that allow them the PG&E to do it themselves. And we're like, no, you don't have to do that. And they say, wait a minute, so I don't have to slow everything down. My manufacturing doesn't have to slow down that day, or I don't have to do these internal processes. It makes work life easier for our clients. And there's always this light bulb that goes off when they suddenly realize what the microgrid can do for them. And energy independence is not something you think about until you have to think about it, right? It's kind of like
until it's a problem. Yeah.
Until it's a problem. It's like health insurance, right? Like you don't know you need it until, oh my gosh, I need it right now, right? Mm-hmm. And though it's not exactly the same thing, but that's what resilience does for you. It gives you this ability to continue to press forward on whatever you were doing, whether it's in your life because I know I've got insurance, it's not going to be a problem, or whether it's in building your own business where I've got power myself. Yes, I know there's a storm coming, but it doesn't matter. We're ready. Like you're prepared, and you're prepared for any eventuality. And if there is some sort of hacker, move to try to shut down one of the grids in the United States, you're like, that's okay. We're good. We have our own, right? Those are the types of things that we don't sell on those fears, but people have them. And because they have them, when the light bulb goes off, I don't have to think about that anymore. Oh, and those are the moments I think we are most excited to get to, and they seem to be happening more and more these days.
I think your timing is impeccable.
Yeah.
So,
like you said, it's a security issue, though. That security thing, like it's not just security for me as a business. We believe it actually is security, like for the country. So thousands
I was
of
talking
little
broadly.
Microgrids, right? I mean, thousands of microgrids means it's not a military target anymore. Mm-hmm. So somebody trying to shut down the grid isn't like it doesn't have any impact. If it's not going to have any impact in that country, then I'm going to focus on something else, right? And so that's a good thing if we can help make that happen.
I think it's kind of funny because you think about the guy who lives in the woods and he's totally off the grid and everyone thinks he's a weirdo, but it's like this is on. Well, it's so different now. It's like we can still be collective in wanting to collectively solve these climate problems. And you can have your own independent, resilient power source, but like it doesn't make you a fringe weirdo anymore. Like it makes you progressive and very like American in your values, I would say.
Well, and look, I mean, at the same time, you're now what we're working on these days is having all of these microgrids connect such that as a grouping, they can help everybody else. Right?
Totally. Yeah. So it's not isolationist. It's not end of times doomsday. Like that's not what this is.
Right. So think about all those egg farmers you mentioned in Canada. If they all got together and decided to offer eggs to their neighbors, you don't have an egg issue, right? In the same way, if all the industrial parks and these 3 big box stores and this Walmart over here and this distribution center there, they all make a bunch of power and then the grid goes down and they say, oh, just plug into ours. Everybody can come here and borrow our power. And you just give it and they just offer it up to them. At some point, power becomes ubiquitous, right? And it's just that simple where I don't have any. Do you have some? Yeah, here. You stop thinking about how much am I making? You take out the sort of greed of it, and you get to this point where I'm trying to help somebody. And that part of it to me is really exciting. That's what we love to do anyway. We feel like we're helping every company, every building we walk into. Like, we're pretty sure we can help you because we're pretty sure you haven't thought much about this yet.
Yeah.
And we're here to help. And that makes it really rewarding.
Totally. I mean, I love nothing more than a mission purpose driven, service forward company that's making a lot of money and making a big impact. Like, that's awesome.
Amen. Well, we'll always, I mean, we'd love to make more money, but what we want to do is make the impact first. You make the impact.
Well, you think about that first and you think of the service, and like, it's ironic because with, the big box store, if they're making power and they're sharing power with their neighbors, that's good for business, but that's not why you do it.
Yeah.
And I think people feel that energy.
Well, think about Walmart. Walmart, I mean, what do they already do? They already sell drugs in their pharmacy. They already have cell phone service. Some of them, you can even pay your electric bill there, right? You can send mail from there. You can do all these services that aren't typically considered, shopping for clothes and groceries, but you can do them there. Why wouldn't you? It's the neighborhood store, right? Why wouldn't you also be able to, get some power? And so there's no matter how you slice it, if I'm producing power myself and it can help my neighbors, I'm doing good by my community. And if I can contribute back to the community, then that's a process I think that helps everybody. If I go from, we all go through that process in life where we've been consuming everything and it's all about us when we're younger. And then finally you want to, maybe I can help a little more. And you start to learn that that's actually a better way to live. And I think I think the building and the built environment is sort of moving through their teenager years now. And we're kind of graduating to, hey, we take up 40% of this planet, the built environment does. Maybe we should contribute something back to it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been a great conversation. I think we could keep going forever, but what are you most excited about with Hover in the next 6 months or a year?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so excited that we are maybe the most impactful thing that we've created in the last couple of years. We mentioned this control system before. I think the control systems will be the disruptor in the industry over the next 5 years. Why? Because they will be the thing that future-proofs every installation. And how do you future-proof something? It means you are readily available and adaptable to whatever might come, right? So it doesn't matter what might come. Like we talked about a bottle of water maybe being able to power your building or something like that. Or SMRs, which are these small nuclear reactors that are still pretty sizable. But if they were to get small enough to power your house, would you buy one? Probably not. Most people wouldn't right now. Like, I don't want a nucler reactor.
I'm like, I don't know. That's true.
Sitting outside next to the trash can. Like, that's not my idea.
Don't play over there, kid.
Right. Just if I come out, if suddenly I have another arm. But, you have to be a little careful. So,
Spider-Man.
Well, it's kind of scary. So I think there are people who this is part of the NIMBY crowd. I don't want that in my backyard, right? And the point is, if you can create a system that you can install today where no matter what gets created in the future, you can simply plug it into that system. That's future-proofing your system. And that is where we are. That's where Hover is. And we've just co-developed that with IBM, and we're very excited to release that next month. So you're the first people to hear about it. It's going to be something that the industry's been clamoring for a while. I heard it for the last 2 days at this RE Plus Microgrids conference, that the controls aren't there today to allow that to happen. And I had to hold my breath because we do have those. And so now what I'm most excited about is what that now means for the market, because it doesn't just say, oh, that's cool, Hover has something cooler that nobody else has. We've already heard that with our wind turbine. So we're used to that. But that's still not the point. The point is that now allows me as a building to interface with any power source and to interface with the building next to me and to interface with 5 buildings around me. Now I can start to manage the interoperability of these buildings, and that redesigns the grid entirely. Now it's no longer centralized power. It's power at every single site connected. And honestly, the right way to connect them would be through blockchain technology, because then it's just a ledger between everybody. And then that very conversation we were having a minute ago, if I need a little bit more one day, I'll borrow from my neighbor. If he needs a little more from me, he takes from me. And at the end of every month, we just settle up. And that's how blockchain works. And it's the easiest thing to do. We're doing it today in many places. That's the way the grid ought to be designed. And it's the most resilient impact. It's distributed resilience, shared power, and it puts everybody in a position to be ready for whatever comes next in the future. That's a grid that you can't argue with, and it's a grid you could build from the bottom up. It's not something that has to come out of Washington. It's not something that has to come out of the biggest technology guy in the world. It can be built through small technologies, helping each and every site become more resilient, and then connect them all. And that kind of solution is what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm just excited that we get to be part of it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited just to be part of this conversation and to, be educated and have fun at the same time. So thank you so much for what you do at Hover and your leadership, and also for educating us and entertaining us today.
Well, thank you, Megan. You're doing great work. I really appreciate it. Keep it up and keep disrupting.
Can I throw in a hell yeah? Am I a hell yeah kind of podcast? I got to decide that.
That sounds like it's part of your jingle.
I think it must be.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thanks for tuning in today to another episode of Green Disruptors, Scaling the Future. I hope you guys had as much fun with Chris as I did, and thanks for tolerating our goof-off nature. I think it's fun when you can talk about serious, important things and still have a good time. So if you found today's episode insightful, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us bring more conversations like this to the forefront. And if you know someone who's passionate about transforming the future of clean energy, share this episode with them. And if you are in the climate space and need help with your marketing and scaling, this is what we do at Mountaintop Social Marketing. So leave a comment, get in touch. Until next time, keep disrupting, keep innovating, and let's scale the future together. And cue my funky jingle whenever I finish writing it.